Hello and welcome to Autistic Radio. In a few moments, we'll be joining Harry for the 555 Live. Harry will be running through the Autistic Radio Facebook page with the post that he has chosen to share with us, and that will bring us into a discussion. It's something that you can join. You can join it by text using the facilities over on Facebook or LinkedIn. And you can also take part with a voice if you contact us here, news@Autistic Radio. We do have an open session called the 444. And it's an easy way to remember. It's 4:44 PM every Sunday, reliably, for the autistic community to have a place where we can meet up with other autistic people. And usually the conversation has some kind of relationship to autism. Today was lovely because people were bouncing off each other on their experience of the media. And it became one of those conversations where there was a shared group thing going on. It doesn't always happen like that. But what we do as a group is we welcome in other people. One of the things that we do here at Autistic Radio is try to welcome the other members of the community, particularly those that are experiencing their idea of autism for the first time. Sometimes they call us late diagnosed, which makes us feel as though, well, late to the party. I prefer the term adult diagnosed. We also make programs about the relationship of autism to the rest of the world in different themes. Currently, we're in the middle of a few different program streams. And the one I'm most actively involved in is a new one that Nicola is leading. She has a whole broad idea about the idea of traveling. We've started in a very far-flung way because I'm here in India, and the idea of an autistic person confronting their own autism in such a different place is a way of accessing conversations about autism. But the subtle thing that Nicola is putting to this is that leaving your house is also a traveling experience. And as we talk about these things, the similarity between the bizarreness of my travel experience and an autistic person leaving the house on the bus to go to the local town is becoming really marked. We're all different in our autism, but what we share is enormous. A couple of other things to mention about what we're doing. We're involving and facilitating different advocates to come the newest one, Scott Frazard, is somebody that we'll be returning to soon. I know that the first one in his series that is out there is a very inspiring listen. Another person in the bag is the bearded behaviorist. This fellow is an autistic man who has so much education behind him and has been also instrumental in trying to explain to the behaviorist community the sensibilities of the autistic experience. So, despite the fact that he has behaviorism in his title, we're going to discover as we record with him a clear description of autism that is very much within the neurodiversity paradigm. Radio and the various people that support us around the world with their comments in their emails, we're reaching a position where the disparate twigs are binding together into something that is stronger. And I hope that as we go forward, you will put your twig alongside ours, because we do need, in these difficult times when the word autism is being associated with all kinds of difficult concepts, we need that solidarity. Radio is part of a revolutionary change in the paradigm of how autism is viewed. I didn't know this was going to be a serious talk when I started, and that's probably because I'm autistic. I'm really looking forward now to handing over and saying, Harry, take us away and take the reins and take us into the 555, mate.
Thanks, Jules. Good evening, everyone. This is the 555, Harry's Facebook, for Sunday, the 26th of January 2025. This is where we go through the Facebook posts that have been shared on the Autistic Radio's Facebook page and have discussions on the topics. And the first post is from Neurodiverse Journeys, an author, neurodivergent author, consultant, advocate and coach, autistic, ADHD, PDA, parent to ND children. And basically it's asking a question. Those who have or wanting a formal diagnosis of autism, why was this important to you? What's your thoughts on that?
I think it's a good question. And it was important to me kind of because the troubles that I was having, I needed to resolve in my own mind the root cause of them. And now in my journey, it doesn't feel like it. Now in my journey, I know that the remedy was almost the same. But at the time, it was like I couldn't not. When I realised that this was like a possibility and my self-diagnosis was like resonating so much, it felt just like a niggle. And I also didn't want to just be, I didn't want to be wrong, because it felt like being wrong about it could have consequences. And it gave me a lot of peace, actually, to have my diagnosis and to start to kind of live my life kind of as I've always needed to, really.
I don't know if I have a good enough answer for this one just yet.
It's a weird
I
question. On you go.
no, Harry. Please, I'll try to speak after you.
The question is a strange one for me because the time I was diagnosed was very young in comparison to a lot of people. When I mean very young, it's still older than many people get diagnosed today. I was diagnosed at 17, and the only reason I was diagnosed is because of a health crisis kind of brought the opportunity up for that to happen. But at the time where I was feeling different, feeling odd, feeling ill, at the time I felt I needed to get an answer, because in my head I felt, is this me just acting out? Is this me? Because parents, not just parents, everybody around you who was older would always say, oh, you're going through a phase, you're going through the change of life, puberty, etc. And this is a sort of some behaviours that happen in some teenagers. So I was wanting an answer to what the problem I felt was. So I can understand this question for people a lot older that would want an answer to a lot of questions that they had about their life. And I just feel grateful that I got that answer quite early on in comparison. Although it took me some time to actually understand autism because of the way it was portrayed at the time, which was in 1998, to the way that it's portrayed now, within myself and within society.
I have an enormous relationship to this question because I did not choose to get diagnosed. I was informed on, effectively, and being informed on to my GP was, for me, a disloyalty that I still resent. But once that had been set in motion, I didn't go away from it, and I ended up in what people perceive as a privileged position of having a formal diagnosis. And the reason I went into it was because I thought that there was going to be some advantage, some kind of late diagnosis course that would add to the understanding and information that I already had. I had already had the neurodiversity paradigm explained, and I was on a journey there to understand that even more. In fact, in the year before my diagnosis, I was pretty well set up with the concept of autism. So when it came to actually some kind of service, there wasn't any service. There wasn't any post-diagnosis support by the conventional autism community. And then later on, when I saw post-diagnostic supports being developed, they were terrible. They weren't in any way of any use to me. So I find myself feeling incredibly resentful diagnosing people in their adulthood and then dumping them. Dumping them with that knowledge. However, if you're listening to this now in the UK, as other people have expressed, there are facilities out there, and there is a community of autistic people who have accumulated enough self-knowledge and they've put it out there free of charge for you. And it's better than anything that you're going to get from most services, with one notable exception in my brain. And even that is just the starting point. So if you know or suspect that you are autistic, I would encourage you to be autistic about it and do the research yourself, and enjoy that as a new, because in all of the real genuine neurodiversity affirming spaces, you will never come across a barrier. Diagnosis is an access point to very, very little, unless by some way you can make it a use benefits. Other than that, I can't personally see an advantage in the diagnosis journey, but we think there is. And somebody will read what Nicola's written in the text.
Yeah, something about, Nicola says something about regarding myself as a broken neurotypical and now more a resilient but world-worn autistic woman also helped me recognise ableism when I was experiencing that. I can totally identify what she said there.
I had realised I was autistic in my mid-20s, but I wasn't diagnosed until 45. When I first was diagnosed, I did get some support. But with COVID, the charity changed and it was all, and with the autism team involved, it was all withdrawn, the usual support. There is support out there, but it's not found via social care.
Yeah, the support. I mean, support is such a broad word. Sometimes it's a word that sounds so simple in terms of someone's support needs and what they want and what they need. Sometimes it's so vast. And I believe that there seems to be a hierarchy and priority list on what autism is worse than others. So what services are provided for others. Like if you've got this approach where you have a bit of confidence about how you speak, about how you look maybe, you're maybe not taken as serious as you should be because you're masking or because you are acting the way that you are naturally, because and then people feel, well, you don't need support even if you are telling people you do need support. And then there's also the thing about lack of funding and lack of facilities, depending what that support need is. But a lot of support, in my opinion, a lot of support is a listening ear, an understanding ear, an understanding room, an understanding setting, a safe place, a safe space, and somewhere that you won't be judged or pitied. Raymond says, use Autumn, don't let autism use you. And Jill says, I think I'm perceived as less autistic by some. The diagnosis has been a card to play. Yeah. Life just isn't that simple, is it? The next post is from Autistic Not Weird. Articles and insight about autism from Chris Bonello, an autistic author, advocate, speaker and former teacher. All articles copyright Chris Bonello 2015 to 2025. And what Chris is talking about, saying that now more than ever before, it's not just nice to see autistic people by their strength, including those with complex disabilities. It is literally the safer option. And what's shared is, we need to start seeing autistic people as being awesome. Then people ask, but what if they're profoundly disabled with huge learning difficulties? They say, then we should still see them as awesome. A person's worth should not depend on whether or not they have a disability. And when society is told that a group of people should never be seen positively, that group start being seen as less worthy of love, respect, dignity, or human rights. And history teaches us how dreadfully that always turns out. So really, it's better to see autistic people as awesome, regardless of their support needs. Their futures are safer that way. What's people's thoughts on this?
I think it's really serious and really important. And when I read this, what popped into my head is I understand that violence starts with a justification, with a belief. It seems, I understand that it's part of human nature it seems to be part of human nature that there's a justification for violence, whether that's a self-defense or what. There's a justification. And what I'm hearing here is we should never ever be justifying like violence or poor treatment of of members of our society based on ability, race, like gender, all these things, because when we degrade a group, we justify violence against them. And it affects all of us. And I think that for a safe, for a good society, the measure of a good society surely has to be like around compassion, not just some sort of survival of the fittest. And I like the idea that it's not really about the survival of the fittest, but of the most well-connected, that ensures like survival. And isolation is the enemy there.
Are these stick figures red and blue to represent the two opposing political parties in the USA, the blue being Democrat and the red being Republican?
I think there's a subtle hint of that there, Raymond, yes.
Yes, the current political climate in the US, the United States, has created a lot of posts from many autistic people's pages in regards to what's just been discussed just now, regards to rights, regards to equality, regards to fear of that being diluted or taken away, and just to repeat the message that it's very important for not to do that. Not just in the US, but anywhere. but that's a prime example at this current moment.
As I'm autistic, I use narrative. And my story is about where I am here right now as they are called here. The person who looks after the cleaning of this level of the hotel is what used to be called deaf and dumb. He's hearing impaired and non-speaking. So I had conversations with him because he does read Marathi, the local language, if I translate it on my mobile phone. I use Google as an alternative communication tool. So I type in and then he reads this beautiful text that comes up on the phone, one word at a time, because reading and writing is something that's difficult to learn in an environment that's restricted on education. But the guy isn't daft. And we had a connection before he spoke to me because he watched me as I was going around the hotel looking at the architecture, and there was something he noticed about me and I noticed about him when I started to interact. So I spoke to somebody who was also his friend. I thought it was a brother that was a carer in some kind of way, but it turns out they've known each other for 3 years and he's his friend and they work together in this hotel. This guy is accepted. He's not, there's no, even amongst the management, there's nobody rolling their eyes. There's nobody frustratedly saying, oh, you should have done this. He is accepted and valued for the work that he does around the place. And I think that that is rather beautiful. This culture is not making him disabled. They are enabling him and valuing him. And he goes around this place happy. And not in that patronizing, condescending way. You know, he seeks me out to have conversations with me and he's happy. So what people put on disabled people in inverted commas is purposeful. It's not necessary to disable somebody who has a different set of skills or a different communication. That is put upon people purposefully by society.
Isn't that then a fact of time is money in the lack of compassion there? Further to that, I was meaning to ask, is signing or sign language an international language? Because I'm beginning to think now that that would be the next thing I would try and learn.
There are different versions as American signing and international. There are different versions of signing, but is that I don't sign in any kind of formal way, and neither does he. We create signs, and he creates signs and body language, and he uses something that I use because I have been reduced to somebody who cannot communicate because I don't know the language here and I can't understand. So I might as well be non-hearing, and I might as well be non-communicative with voice in a comparison. And what I do in those circumstances is I sign and I clown and I exaggerate movements, and I do that to communicate with people and they accept it. And that's what he's doing all of the time. So there is a kind of version of an exaggeration of body language that we do as signing anyway.
I'm quite concerned as an autistic person about a kind of pre-verbal communication, which is gestural, which is what you're talking about, I believe, a form of signing, a form of communicating without words. You can do it with your eyes sometimes, but, you know, given that apparently that's difficult for autistic people. But that aside, yeah, a pre-verbal form of communication that uses gesture, that uses indication, that uses pointing, that uses the shared space we're in.
The next post is from Spectrum Sloth, which is a personal blog from a late diagnosed autistic mama bear. Ace, cats, the sky, painting, sparkly things, trains, languages, memes, she, her. And what she shared is about the autistic, her own autistic, what she shared is about her own say that again. What she shared is about her own autistic diagnosis or autistic realisation. And what it says is, it's about 5 years since I realised I'm autistic, and I still keep going. It's about 5 years since I realised I'm autistic, and I still keep going over things. I'm not sure I'll ever stop having those aha moments. Finding out that you're autistic as an adult is like watching a film with a plot twist at the end. You have to go back to the beginning and look at it again with fresh eyes. Suddenly you can see things you didn't even know to look for. What's people's thoughts on that? It's going to link you with the conversations that we're having already.
I like this because it makes the situation creative.
I've been diagnosed 10 years. I'm still finding new things. And just after I lost my dad in the conversation, I just discovered I was ADHD as well. And again, I'm discovering more stuff.
I think it's the journey of life itself is you keep discovering new things. Not that you feel, well, not that I've ever felt that I know everything, but there's always a surprise. And as the post says from Spectrum Sloth, is there always seems to be a twist, a plot twist, or some sort of information that just throws you in a positive way. Sometimes it gives you a fright, but mostly it's been nice and positive and interesting and worthwhile investigating. So yeah.
I think for me, the plot twist really helped me to understand some of the feedback I'd been getting from other people in my life up until that point. It made sense of some of the distress that I'd seen in my brother and mother, like when I was growing up, and I could not understand what was upsetting them, why they were upset with me. At one point, my brother said it felt like he didn't even have a sister, and it was only really when when it dawned on me, I think I was doing the AQ50 or something, and I was processing how high my score was, and reading the description, seeing myself, and I was like, and it was the same. I'd had similar feedback from people at school that I was hard to connect with, and I couldn't understand it because for me, I was willing to connect. I was interested, but I was just missing the mark for certain people in my life. And my diagnosis has helped me to kind of really accept I can't, like, that I accept myself and accept the role that I can play in other people's lives.
Jules? Yeah, just when you're talking about, your brother, when I was growing up, it's a weird thing just came to me. I mean, I had my own big brother, but we didn't grow up together, so it's a bit different. But so in my house, there was four of us, and I was the big brother. And the sort of stereotype of the big brother that you seen on television and I thought I seen in society itself, like in school, is like someone that's quite confident and quite strong and tough even, and protects her younger siblings. And I always felt that because I was different and I was feeling fragile, that I was not a failure, but I felt that I wasn't up to scratch on that department, and a disappointment for my younger siblings. I mean, I've got two younger sisters and a younger brother. My younger brother's 8 years younger than me. I just felt I was never, and I still do feel, in a way that I wasn't, the kind of big brother that I would have liked to have been, like giving advice and things like that, because I was going through such a tough time. So yeah, I'm kind of going off tangent a bit, but it's amazing how these things pop up while you're discussing certain topics. But as Raymond says, it's difference is okay. Not everybody's the same, and I kind of preach it in many ways to others, like don't feel bad for being different, etc. But there's times where I've done it myself. Don't take my own advice at times.
I think that's what has made such a difference for me in connecting with the autistic community, is because it always feels a little bit easier to be compassionate towards other people. And I think seeing other people, being around other autistic people, is helping me to have a bit more compassion with myself too. The validation really helps, and I do hope that young people growing up autistic now won't have that same sort of need for validation. And though I'm trying to sort of esteem myself, it's so nice after all these decades to speak to other people who are saying me too or something similar like that, rather than to just feel like such a puzzle to myself.
Yeah, I've had that. I can remember when I first went to, it was the Strathclyde Autistic Society that I was referred to not long after my diagnosis, which was based in Glasgow, and it was an organisation which promoted like social inclusion, had social groups and things like that, and it was starting a sort of Thursday group, and it was every second Thursday, or maybe a Thursday a month, probably maybe every second Thursday evening, and just to sit amongst people and then say something, explain something that I've said before to somebody else, even a friend, and even though they're trying to be understanding, they've not got a clue what I'm talking about. But when I'd shared it with somebody else in one of these groups, it's like they identified right away. And that connection itself was just, I still feel it. I mean, the weird thing is I don't remember who it was, but I do remember the feeling of feeling a connection, that somebody understands what you're talking about and it's not just all in your head.
Or they think you're quite weird.
Yeah, this I'm weird too. Join me.
I suppose that's the masking, because I used to get away with it quite well when we were out in pubs drinking. Friends would just sort of smirk and go, "There he goes, he's off again." But it wasn't like challenging or critical. Whereas sometimes when you did that in sort of like, non-intoxicated company, you could become quite wearing on people and they would let you know.
Yes, I've had that. I can remember I even had that on a particular group leader or facilitator, should I say, at one group that was actually for autistic people. I think I was just going on and on and on and on, and he didn't say shut up or anything like that, but it's just like you could see going, aye, okay, right. I was just in one of those moods I can't remember what it was about, just going on and on and on. But if you sit in certain company, they sort of, especially if they're intoxicated, I suppose, it sort of relaxes them. And if they're used to you, they actually like how you are, and they're very comforting when you're doing that. And if you don't act that way, they're actually worried about you.
Is that not a situation where, the normal kind of situation is dependent on rules and, unwritten rules almost that people seem to know? And you and I could walk into these situations and just sort of like forget the rules. And so really we're wanting a space where, normal allows you to be a bit, not ignorant of the rules, but flexible.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, flexibility goes a long way in a lot of things. And I've seen it demonstrated in many ways, even outside, talking about autism, but being inclusive, being flexible enough for people to feel involved, feel included, feel part of something goes a long way. Of course, there's rules or definite, there's boundaries to an extent, but they try and keep it as flexible as possible, as long as people are safe.
Oh, I think we're all a wee bit aware of boundaries and almost hyper aware of boundaries at times.
The next post is from Joy of Autism. It's a personal blog. This page is dedicated to my son Jacob and for all the autistics and their families and friends. My goal is to inform, advocate, educate, and share smiles. And it's talking about autistic people and employment. And it says, did you know about 85% of autistic people are unemployed? Only 30% of autistic people disclose their diagnosis to employers. Autistic adults earn 40% less than their peers. Autistic adults are often underpaid and only part-time. Only 1/3 of autistic adults are employed within 2 years after high school. And autistic adults face a much greater rate of workplace bullying and unfairness. What's your thoughts on this post?
Well, for me, it's a question of whether or not you really want to be employed or not. But I'll open up the space a bit while I ponder it a bit more.
Well, my life is, I find, generally unorthodox, but quite inspiring as well. Because I used to feel terrible that I hadn't been employed for such a long time. I can remember in school, I was actually terrified of work experience, and I actually refused to do it. I don't know if schools still do that now, but what it was is people would go to a place and for a week go to this location and sort of do some sort of training or some sort of experience. I don't know because I never did it, and I never really asked anybody that did do it. And I felt I was the only person that didn't go. And I felt so stupid in not going, and felt like, why am I refusing to do this? But I just had this fear about it. And because of the way my schooling ended, which was in a health crisis, I ended up going to college for as a new start. And it was like a 2-year sort of, I was 17, so it was 2 years up to I was 18, 19. And it was a bursary that there was a funding to help me. I still lived at home at the time, which helped, but the bursary helped me with costs, the travelling costs, and buy other things. But once that ended, I felt like a bit of a lull. And I still felt I cannot get into employment. It's terrifying. But I felt working class guilt, I call it. Because everyone around me was working. My siblings were younger than me, and they started working, and I wasn't working. But then I realised to myself that working is different from employment. Because what I ended up doing is I ended up doing volunteering. And the flexibility of volunteering helped me to mould into an interest and actually work quite effectively, particularly in things like admin, and actually sometimes even managing things without getting a big life story about it. But I always had that fear of employment. And what hasn't helped is when I became more confident of giving it a go, because I went through all these different kind of programs, working for you in Western Barnshire, which is to help people in disability or mental health or autism. They kind of put that separate to try and help you get employment, or at least get somewhere that you feel it structures your life if you can't, which I already had. But the thing that always put me off, and I've talked about this many times before, is the way that the job interviews go. And the pressure that you're aware that the employer will be under, as well as, the interviewee. And you know that the way that society is kind of money driven, and it's time driven, and it's pressure. So I always felt kind of out of the loop, and going for a job interview was basically tokenistic in many ways. Because I came under this disability thing. And it just feels like they were just speaking to you just to tick a box. And it was very difficult to the job interview anyway, to actually sell myself properly. Because you need to train yourself on how to talk. And basically a lot of people get through life actually by bullshitting and spinning, as we're probably all aware of. And they're good at it, and what they don't know is they sort of spin it a bit, and then they may learn on the job, or they may just get away with it. But it's just something that kind of lingers with me even now, the employment, and how I understand that can be such a nightmare scenario for many people.
I think there is a big difference between work and employment. I'll leave it at that because Jules is going to come in.
I'm to contributors, a profession, decades, and they were saying that they are now having to realise the unacceptable toll that trying to mask and go through and be a professional has taken on them. And they are now fighting to get some kind of accommodations that they were afforded during COVID to continue. And they're in America. So what's happening in America is actually an attack on everything that makes it possible for people who have been gainfully employed over there to continue, because any support, any idea that there is an inclusivity is being removed from them. So employment is rarely any kind of magic bullet for us. I've been self-employed all of my life, and it's only because I'm in self-employed and I've been able to control and create my own supports that has made sense.
There's a comment from Robbie on the page. You know, attached to this. With being autistic, I struggled at school. I was bullied by both children and teachers. Most of my energy was just surviving. I was held back with subjects I was good at because of the ones I struggled with. When I left, I did not meet the entry requirements for college, so I could not catch up. By the time I returned to college as a mature student, it was too late. I had gained the qualification but was too old. It was the same with apprenticeships. I was too old. Almost all jobs were advised as school leaver or older with experience. There was, however, no means to get experience. All that was on offer was agency jobs or 0-hour contracts. I could not cope with that uncertainty. And that's something I can certainly identify with, the uncertainty part.
As a school leaver, nobody would touch me. And it took until a couple of part-time jobs and a couple of temporary jobs before I got the opportunity to for me, which was as a courier with a group of oddballs. So there was never any way in.
I now can't even do voluntary work. The last attempt, I was forced to use public transport to get there. I became ill on the way back, and because I got someone to contact me to try and get me as far as the bus station, because I was feeling faint, I had a meltdown, and they passed that information on. I was removed from the voluntary job.
Yeah, it's stressful. It's a lot of commitment and responsibility to take on with employment. I sometimes wonder who really did well at school, because I knew a lot of people who couldn't wait to leave. In fact, left school quite early. And, if I could call anybody normal, they're normal because they kind of fit right in. But they hated school. And I did well at school, but I hated school too. And so who enjoyed it and who did well there?
I think it's many did well there, but they're still desperate to leave because, many ways, even if you did well, I'd imagine school was a bit of a chore. I suppose many people must have enjoyed it, but certainly a lot of people didn't. I know I certainly didn't. And feeling not part of the community and society at that time was probably kind of left me on how not feeling confident to go to work experience as well. Because I was picked on, I felt different, and if I went on the work experience, I'd probably feel not confident enough to be involved. I couldn't even, I think it's the same for most people. I didn't even know what I wanted to do in terms of career aspiration, as they called it in my school. not a job aspiration. If you're getting a job is like inferior. It's like a career you must aspire to, which really annoys me to this day, because it's making it out if you didn't have a career in their eyes, you were failing, even though that is not true. But going on to Robbie's point about voluntary work as well, I feel very fortunate with my voluntary work that I did with Oxfam in Helensburgh. The manager there was very supportive, and he seemed to be quite knowledgeable about people who are autistic, because there was many that have worked there already. And, you know, through his own experience maybe as well, didn't delve into that, but he was very inclusive, as he should be, but I know it doesn't always work out that way. So in the days where I felt stressed out and possibly, you know, meltdown would be coming, because at the beginning it was quite intense and stressful, because I was so annoyed that I wasn't learning quickly enough, because the job that I was doing was doing the books, doing the admin for the shop, and in my head it felt vital to learn things quickly as soon as possible. And because it wasn't clicking quickly enough, I was getting frustrated and getting angry, and there was support there. But that won't always be the case. And some voluntary places, people either are not trained, or maybe they're just not patient enough, or just maybe not the right people to be there. And it can exclude a lot of people. That can happen, and I've heard it happen to many people, and it's really hard to hear, because that is usually a way in for work. It wasn't for me as such, but for other people that were doing the volunteering, it was basically people waiting or using the opportunity, the experience, so that they can get more confidence, so they can get employment. And they were always looking for employment at the same time. I think I was the only one that really wasn't. So it's really important that voluntary work is very inclusive and understanding as possible.
Now, here's the thing. Besides thinking that employment is rarely a good idea, conventional employment is rarely a good idea for people who are having difficulty with their autism and their diagnosis and things like this, I'm starting a business with another autistic businessman. And the intention will be to only employ autistic people, because we find that in our business lives, we have also been dealing with other autistic people, other undiagnosed autistic people, as our preferred option of people to deal with. And we've been employing other autistic people as our preferred option as well, because they make better employees if employment is the appropriate thing for them. And then another thing on this, I speak to a autistic knowledge development quietly, and he says, look, I know quite a few people who, through the late diagnosis process, they have skills and professions, and they may be in some kind of burnout or some kind of stage of having to reassess their lives. But when you're ready, Jules, there's a resource here of ready, willing and skilled people. So there's a lot of aspects to this. If you are an employer and you get it right, you get a really good deal from autistic people.
The previous voluntary job, I'd worked 10 years, no problems, because the employers worked round the things I couldn't do. They didn't make anything that stressed me out. And the previous one to that worked until the change of manager for the same reason.
Yeah, it's all individual dependent on who's the manager who's there and who you're connecting with, who's basically running the show. But it just reminds me of, you know, Oxfam. The reason I mention Oxfam and Helens because that's the only kind of voluntary. It's not the only voluntary job that I've had. I still do other voluntary things, but the other voluntary things that I do is basically me running it mostly. You know, with no manager. You know, there's a committee and all that, but I'm one of the key people. But so it was very different when I was doing the shop environment. And that's what was asked is, what do you want to do? What do you not want to do? And what I didn't want to do was do the till in the shop. Because I didn't want to deal with people too much, the public too much, and because the speed of being on the till and not keep people waiting, and the speed of needing to feel like you have the answer for people if they're asking, etc. It just felt intense. But there was a few times that I was asked if I wanted to take it on. And to my own credit, I did give it a go. I wouldn't do it again, but I did give it a go, and I did have that experience. It wasn't nightmarish, but it's certainly not something I would want to do again. But there was encouragement there. It's like, if you want to give it a go, give it a go. Don't worry if you're not able to do it. Don't worry. I know it's easily said and done, because me being me, I feel bad for a slightest mistake, but it was still an experience, and it's something that was worthwhile doing. Although I wouldn't do it again, and I know why I wouldn't want to do it again. But on Jules' point, turning it round, you know, there's people out there with skills. There's opportunities out there for autistic people, you know, to be employed, to get involved. And I think that's what the message has always got to be kind of put out there. There is all these issues, but a lot of these issues isn't always down to the individual. It's down to the way society and the culture is, the pressures. And I think a lot of these pressures affect everybody in a way, and they hamper success in many ways for people. The demands, the speed that things need to be done by. But the strangest thing is, the things that I do, I'm always trying to do things as quickly as possible. And I have to actually tell myself to slow down. So it's just a weird one. I'm just kind of thinking out loud here, but there is a positive spin on it, and it's basically telling autistic people they are worthy. I know it's not something that should need to be said, but some people need for it to be heard or seen or read, and it's good to share that, because some people just feel so excluded and they feel so bad about themselves because they feel that they're not able to do anything because they can't get employed, or because they don't feel they'll be accepted into somewhere that's voluntary either.
The biggest hurdle to me working is ableist safeguarding teams that won't work with professionals that understand autism.
I don't even know what a safeguarding team is, Robbie. You know, you're in this system that is entirely foreign to me. What's a safeguarding team?
Officially, it's supposed to be about stopping harm coming to people, but it's more about protecting the organisation that is the people working there or using the organisation.
Okay, so it's a load of neurotypicals covering their own backs as white saviours, yeah?
Exactly.
most of the people that work in autism are cunts. They are entirely doing it for their own ego. And then you come across some wonderful people. But I stick by my first statement. Most of the people that work in autism do not know that they are cunts, but they are cunts.
The next post is from Autism West Midlands, who are a charity organisation who are based in the West Midlands of England, UK. And what they've shared is an 8-week course. And what it's called is Team Autism Confident Shirley, SHIRLEY, for young people supported by SOLAR, SOLAR, 13 to 18. And it says this course offers an opportunity to learn more about autism in a small, supportive group setting. It provides an opportunity to discuss individual experiences, hear the experiences of others, and identify strategies that could help in your day-to-day life. But what it also says is Teen Autism Confident is an 8-week program for diagnosed autistic teens aged between 13 and 18 who are already being supported by the organisation SOLAR. And it says that who can attend? Teenagers over 13 years with an autism diagnosis. Your postcode comes under Birmingham or Solihull Council, and that you're able to commit to attend weekly sessions. And their sessions start on the 6th of March. And what's included? One-to-one meetings in the first and last weeks. 6 small group sessions up to 10 participants at a time. Topics include understanding autism, sensory awareness, anxiety, self-esteem, and more. And it's running up till April. It's good to share these things, but some of the language here is quite alarming. I must say, it's like, I suppose things need to have a criteria. But I'll listen to other people's thoughts first.
Well, the first thing that strikes me is a commitment. It's right out there, front and centre, that you have to commit to 10 weeks. And by far the majority of people who are autistic are not able to commit. It's already got that stick written large right at there. If you don't commit, you are being set up to fail. This is an ableist seeming look to this, and if you don't even get that, if you don't even get that the autistic sensibility can't commit, the people who need this service are in a situation where they are in a turmoil of confusion, and committing would mean to them that they are taking on something that they are also going to blame themselves for if they don't manage to do it all. You know, this should be a drop-in. This should be, you get the opportunity, and if it doesn't work out, that's okay. We'll just extend it for you.
Spaces are limited is one of those weird phrases, isn't it? It's a wee bit like comment is free.
Yeah, it's just very alarming language. I think their position will say that they've got so much money or so much funding to provide something for a certain amount of time, so they're limited and restricted from what they can offer. But as Jules says, it's like it's very triggering.
They're not. They're not limited. They have set up a structure that suits them. They are not taking a meaningful input from the autistic community so that they can get the best service out there. They are using this as a framework to pay themselves. This is what we've seen. We've studied how the Autism Network put themselves together to get some funding, to get 20 odd grand. And even in that funding, they were supposed to, as a necessary part of the funding, to take a meaningful input from autistic people. And they were in contact with the whole group of autistic people that we have here. And they entirely sidelined us, entirely ignored us. And this is probably what's happened here. They have not gone to what I would see in my business is you go to find out what the customer requires and provide it. What they're doing is the opposite. They're saying, we've got this, take it or leave it. It's set up like this. You know, there's so many of you. Some of you will fit into this. And we're effectively gatekeeping this by making it inappropriate for the majority of you. But don't worry, because we get paid anyway.
I'm a parent to autistic young people, and good luck making a bunch of autistic teenagers commit to a 10-week block and engage with it against their will. Kind of is what I'd say. I had a bit more of a look, and it sounds like Autism West Midlands was something that was maybe started by parents of autistic people. Yeah, and it is. I think it's almost, given the world I feel like I'm a bit more immersed in. It's a bit jarring when it's not autistic led, or like really sort of elevating the autistic voice. You notice it. You notice it when it's missing. Well, I do.
Okay, look, I'm really spiky at the moment. I'm not my usual reasonable self, and as you hear, I've been swearing and getting annoyed. Let me calm myself down and put it in a different way. With very subtle changes of input from autistic people like ourselves that have been out there in other things and have then come to understand a little bit about autism, we could take this framework that they have, give it a little bit of a subtle twist, and make it brilliant. It doesn't take much to change it. And I see the LinkedIn user there is cheering me on because they're agreeing with me because somebody is sort of speaking out, in an annoyed way. But there are never any autistic individuals in the planning, and that they're agreeing with me. But there are brilliant examples here in the UK of autistic-led organisations. I don't want to just go straight back to autistic knowledge development. There are others. Swan has done something that is far and above the kind of ableist crap that we've had in the past. So there is no real excuse, because now there are good examples to copy, and there are wonderful individuals who are both autistic and very able in their careers and their professions. What is purposefully being done here is we are being excluded from having the opportunity to put the information in. And yes, we should be angry about it, but the problem is expression of that anger here doesn't do it. So we have to do this other thing, which is working with the system we've got and gradually undermining it or going around the gatekeepers.
I was just going to say briefly, the one-to-one sessions might make it that wee bit more flexible for people in their needs.
It depends on the approach. I mean, I can still understand everything's been said.
We'll
Here.
get from it.
It's, yeah, that is always concerning. But also gives an opportunity to speak about it as well anyway, so, but yeah, hopefully it goes well, but as Nicholas says, it's probably asking a lot from that age range, because it's hard to commit at any age and feel under pressure to commit, unless you're committing because you feel comfortable enough to commit, because there's a safety net where if you don't go one day or 1 week, you're not going to be excluded and basically have a mark against your name, which people do fear.
Yeah, that mark against your name goes straight back into the autistic experience that they're then going to be talking about. And somebody has made the point that some individuals, nothing. But I would also say that for some people, this is going to be a continuation of the damage. This is going to be another experience like school if you're not careful. And as far as the LinkedIn user that's speaking at the moment, I can't call you by your first name because it just comes up as LinkedIn user, which means that it could be you, or it could be Ted, or it could be George.
The next post is from Autism Together, which is a charity organisation. Autism Together is one of the leading providers of autism services and support in the UK. And what they're talking about is they're saying, recently we told you all about a new touring exhibition on Now in Whirl, featuring artists from Autism Together. Some of the artists featured, along with other people we support, went along to Wallesley Central Library this week to see the artworks on display. Congratulations to Mark, Ellie, Molly, Alex and Martin for being selected to be part of the show. The Inspire Tour is an artistic celebration of creativity, diversity and community, organised by 471 Roots CIC, a local organisation making creative arts inclusive and accessible to all. The free show started this week and is visiting two Wirral libraries, which is Wallesley Central Library, up to February the 2nd, 2025, and West Kirkby Library, February the 3rd to the February the 17th, 2025. You can check some of our artworks and the photos, and they have shared photos of some of the artwork, which is very colourful, very creative, and it's a great thing to share. What's other people's thoughts?
I love it. I'm having a look at the pictures just now. And I would be so curious. I would really enjoy going to, or just seeing more autistic art. For sure, it's fascinating. I wonder what's gone into the creation of some of these pieces as well. There's some cats there that are just delightful. They're all so unique.
I love the wee angle they're all tilting at as well. Inclusive art's an important thing. Round about where I stay sometimes it's not that inclusive. It can be quite costly to go on some of their courses. So, and then again, people's ideas of art, often follow a certain kind of guideline or routine. Whereas to just help you open up and explore your creativity, you know, the space for that would be what I would respond to.
About a decade or so ago, I did a evening class at Leith School of Art, and one of the first parts of that was doing mark making. And that, I think that there's something in just getting a shot of some different materials, and it's there's a connections group every second Wednesday that I'm part of. It's a women's group, but there are men's groups as well, and I think there's some mixed ones. And one of the things we're talking about doing is having artists present, introduce us to some materials. I think we maybe get some packs sent out first, and then we're going to get to have a shot of that, and that's something that we're able to do from home. I think that there's more people offering such things.
Yeah, there was a men's group in our local health centre for people that was using art almost like in the therapy. You know how people are a wee bit kind of anti this idea of art therapy, but I think it can be okay if it helps you get to that opening up to yourself and your creativity, which is very difficult because a lot of the teaching methods don't get you any closer to that. They're often trying to get you to follow a pattern of creativity. Unless you were born creative and you've been doing this yourself and somebody's helped you get on the road, you know, finding your creativity at a later age can be extremely difficult. I've found it in various ways myself by serendipity, but never in a classroom situation, you know. Never somebody coming up and saying, oh, you look like you're good at putting those things together. Let's try and explore that. If you see what I mean.
Maybe there's something more about uncovering creativity than creating it.
It's like that, you know, that fear of the blank page. You know, somebody says, let's create something, you go, and you just suddenly go blank. It's a bit like that mutism thing as well. I've got a book here that's really good called On Not Being Able to Paint by Marion Milner. It's brilliant.
I've been involved in a few art kind of projects in the past. Usually done as a community project to include people, you know. Generally, when I've done it in the past, it was mental health services, and it's getting away from the medical side of things and just getting people involved in the social side of things and be creative and a more relaxed setting than some areas can be. And I've done many things. I can remember creating a head, you know, a face head of my mum years ago, and I enjoyed doing that. And other things where art wise it can be poetry, writing groups, it can be drawing, painting pictures. I've kind of done all that and experienced that, and it's always been worthwhile doing. I never stuck at it because as soon as it was done, because these things are generally limited to how long they're on, I kind of move on. But I've always appreciated being involved in it, and it's always been a real therapeutic, a great therapeutic experience. It shows you that it brings the confidence up a bit, and it brings joy, and you see the creativity from some other people who at first appeared quite unconfident, maybe shy, maybe didn't want to speak, but as soon as something was created and they seen that other people liked it, not that I'm saying it should matter whether people like it or not, but when they see the appreciation of the work, it just brings up the atmosphere of the room, and people generally go away happy, and it does its job. It's not for everybody, but it's certainly something that I've benefited from.
I like collage because I think a lot of our lives, or my life in particular, it has elements of collage about it. It's making do and mend with what's available and what's afforded to me, you know. Just put that with that and see what happens.
The next post is from neurodivergent Lou, who's a blogger finding a place in a neurotypical world. And what they've shared is 27 ways hyposensitivity might show up as an autistic person. It's a presentation. So I'll just go through some of them. Unexplained injuries due to walking into objects, the urge to chew, high pain threshold, handwriting with heavy pressure, craves salty, crunchy or spicy food, make a lot of noise, like speaking loudly, loves concerts, shopping centres and other loud spaces, craves fizzy drinks, may be attracted to light and bright colours, including staring at the sun, enjoy making noises like humming and singing, may not notice loud noises, enjoy sitting under heavy objects, enjoy spinning in circles, enjoy thrill seeking like going on roller coasters, skydiving, may eat loudly and take large bites of food, prefers tight clothing, which is some of the things that this post has shared. What's people's thoughts on this?
I just put in the text that I liked it because of the heavy handwriting pressure. I always did that because I remember going right through pages when I was a kid at school. And to this day, I still hold my pens and pencils incorrectly, you know. They suit me, but, you know, it kind of give me calluses too. So that I never learned to do those things correctly.
Yeah, similar. I related to it in terms of craves, the crave salty, crunchy or spicy food. I've got a fixation on Golden Wonder salt and vinegar crisps because they're the strongest, most intense ones that I've found. And I can tell when my life's going really well because I don't eat them very much. And the more stressed I am, the more crisps I need. I do worry about my kidneys a wee bit with it. And I'm not into sweet stuff, but I love an Aqua Libra, and I find if I've got like a cold can of the bubbles, I find that really, I love that too. And the heavy stuff, it's another thing I go to if I'm feeling dysregulated is weight. So I love a weighted blanket or a weighted cushion or a dog on my knee. And I've really realised that like hoodies are my favourite, and I love the weight of them as well. And I know you can get weighted hoodies and it sounds pretty good. But then I do notice that I have to be sensitive to sometimes my body changes what it needs, and I have to respond to that, which can take a little bit of catching up to.
And yet a lot of people, even non-autistic people, do some of these things. So I think we have to be careful sometimes that we don't assume a lot of these things are, you know, rules or typical.
Yeah, similar strategies that people use when they're recovering from trauma as well, and working with the sensory system. I think that there's so much to learn about interoception and how that helps to regulate you. It's a bit like a conversation I had with Jules recently about action and taking action and being grounded in the present. And it seems to be so important to remember the body, every day.
Good point. Nick, trauma is general.
It does go on a bit with other things, just to continue the conversation a bit. Come on towards the end of the broadcast. Likes tight hugs, not notice that hands or face are dirty, may not realise own strength, struggles to sit down, may struggle to remember about personal space, likes to touch everything, love to jump up and down, struggles to remember where objects are in a space. Does any of them relate? I've got this thing about the struggling to sit down. In many ways, I can sit down for hours, but there's many times where I struggle because I'm either anxious or even actually happy about something.
Well, that's why I used to struggle with social environments, was because I had to sit down for too long. I wanted to get up and move around, but that's not allowed in places like cinemas and things like that. Sometimes it is now, yeah, but not when I was enduring certain situations.
A few more. Spends time in the noisiest part of the house, for example, the kitchen. May not feel extreme temperatures. Smells objects like grass, pens, etc. And often rocks backwards and forwards. Those seem relatable to other people I've talked about.
I loved smelling things, but I would disagree that the kitchen's the noisiest part of the house. I find it quite peaceful at times.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Kitchens can be noisy. It just depends on the house. Depends how many people live in the house as well. But I think my bedroom can be the noisiest because of the fan they always have on.
Well, I find my kitchen's a wee bit like a dance studio sometimes.
I think kitchens could be quite noisy with all the clinking and the plates and the cutlery and things like that too. And if I'm having a really hypersensitive time, I start to wish I had all wooden plates and things like that so they didn't make that high pitched noise. But yeah, we're talking about hyposensitivity.
Yeah, and all the timers and alarms going off. To me, it's like a wee dance when you're cooking. You're going through it all in there's a method to the madness.
Well, thanks everybody. It was a great discussion tonight. That's us come to the end of the broadcast. It's quite intense, funny in places, passionate in others, angry in some, but all ending on a positive note, and it's been enjoyable. I also thank everybody that shared those posts that we were able to talk about tonight, because without those posts being shared, there'd be no topics to discuss for this particular programme. So thanks again. This is Harry's Facebook for Sunday the 26th of January 2025, which is part of the 5:55 PM Spectrum Voices conversation here every Sunday. So this has come to the end, and I'll hand over to Jules.
Thank you, Harry. And this is the time that we look at some of the activities of Autistic Radio, supported by the entirely autistic charity Autistic Association here in the UK.